Hello Year 5 and welcome to Wednesday's English tutorial with me, Mr. Bristow, and this is for the blue and green group. So yesterday we should hopefully have at least written our introductory paragraph telling our reader what actually happened on this auspicious day. Some of you might have got through to starting the main body of your text, and if that is you, well done. If not, I'm going to do a short introduction, or for those of you who haven't quite finished, just a recap to pick up on that photo paragraph. It's probably, as I said yesterday, the most important paragraph because it is the one with the clearest evidence. Although it's slightly longer, it's really important to get that right. So some of you might even want to go back and check that it makes sense, what you've written. So again, what is the structure of this paragraph? Well, I'm introducing the argument. I'm saying some things that agree with that point of view, and then I'm saying some things that go against that point of view. So within this paragraph, I'm saying that the lunar landings were fake. There were pictures that lack validity. That's my argument. I'm saying here are the pictures that lack validity. So no stars, flying flag, and the C written on the rock. And then I'm saying reasons against. I'm saying that Japan took photos and you could see where the lunar module landed, and America took photos and you could see actual tyre tracks. That is the gist of my paragraph. So what could that look like? Well, again, I've taken the waggle and I've taken the essence of each sentence using my mimicking, our level 1 and 2 mimic, and I've created this. So those who believe the lunar landings to be fake have called into question the validity of key photos taken on the mission. The first dubious means sort of unsure, unclear, possibly faked image, shows the astronauts on the moon, but there are no stars in the sky. Another key point to consider is, although there is no air on the moon, the flag is waving in another picture. And I've managed to get my subordinating conjunction in there in the form of although. Finally, critics say one of the rocks could be a film prop, as you can see a letter C on it. Having said this, people who believe the landings are real have pointed out in 2007, a Japanese mission took photos of the landing area and you can see marks on the moon's surface. Furthermore, in 2009, an American satellite took pictures where you can see the module's tracks. So, I've taken the essence of all those sentences, and what I've really tried to do is start my sentences with one of those excellent starters that I gave you yesterday. So we've got finally, furthermore, having said this, and they're really, really important to try and get that flow to my argument, so it's not just sentence, 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 sentence. So I'd like to invite you to pause the video now if you haven't quite finished your introduction and first paragraph, and pick up the video again when you have done that, and I will show you how to do your second and third main paragraph. Okay, hopefully by now you've finished that starter, and we can now move on to our second and third main paragraphs. These ones will be slightly shorter as there's less evidence, and evidence that's not quite as important as in the photos. Before we begin, I wanted to just go through some things that are really key for us to be including at all times. We need a range of sentence openers. We can't just have the lunar landings, the lunar landings, the lunar landings. We could use our expanded noun phrases to give detail. Brave astronauts from America. We could have our relative clauses. So that's our noun followed by a relative pronoun and then some more information. Cohesive linking phrases in addition to this, etc. Parenthesis, all that information that we can put in brackets to give more detail. So for example, our relative clauses might go within our parenthesis. Can you reorder clauses and phrases within the sentence? So if you've put some sort of adverbial in the middle, can you move that to the front of your sentence to rearrange it to make it flow better? So let's move on to our second mini argument, our next main paragraph, which is all about the space race. So in addition to this, the Soviet Union, now known as Russia, had equipment that was able to track the American spacecraft to the moon. If there was no proof of the mission being successful, Russia would have been able to publicly humiliate America, but they made no such claims. However, those people invested in the conspiracy theory suggest that in the 1960s, the USA and the Soviet Union were involved in a space race. Both countries were desperate to beat each other and be the first country to put man on the moon. And at the start of the 1960s, the United States of America were losing the race. Therefore, many believe the United States of America couldn't have been successful. So two very simple points here. Point number one, we are making that the Soviet Union, now Russia, would have loved to have embarrassed America. And if so, therefore, the lunar landings must have been real, because if they were faked, they would have told everyone. But we are still, in terms of that balance, we are saying that the space race happened, and people argue that it couldn't have been real because they were so far behind at the beginning of the 1960s. So there is the content of this paragraph. So I've just taken this paragraph and I've underlined key words and phrases within it which might be able to help us with that mimic level 1. So what I'm going to do now is show you how I'm going to write this paragraph by changing the words and the phrases that I've underlined. So instead of in addition to this, I'm going to put an additional argument states. So it's put the Soviet Union, now known as Russia. I might put Russia called the Soviet Union in the 1960s. You see, I'm just changing things around. So had equipment that was able to track American spacecraft to the moon. So I'm changing equipment. Had, instead of equipment, I might put the I'm not sure if I've spelt capability right, so I'm going to purple dot it to make sure that I check it later. So the capability, an additional argument states Russia, called the Soviet Union, double O, need to get rid of that, had the capability to, now instead of track, we could say to follow, that might be better than C, to follow the, instead of American spacecraft to the moon, we could put the lunar or American, because that we need to be clear, follow the American lunar space module to the moon. There you go. So I'm just changing words. So if there was no proof of the mission being successful, so I might say if there was no evidence of the mission occurring, Russia would have been able to publicly oh look, I haven't spelt that correctly, so I need to make sure I always copy words that are there correctly. Publicly criticise America. Again, I'm not sure if I've spelt criticise correctly, but that's fine. I don't want to interrupt my writing flow. I just want to go back and check it later. So Russia would have been able to publicly criticise America and make them look foolish. And then a short sentence, however, no such claims have been made. So very easy, taking the essence of everything and then just rewriting it and changing some of the words. So I've already put however. So instead of however those people, I have to put on the other hand. And again, I can get that from my list of phrases to aid cohesion that you were given yesterday. So on the other hand, so instead of those people invested in conspiracy theories, I might put those who believe the landings to be a conspiracy think differently. They argue at the beginning of the decade 1960s, the United States of America was behind in the space race. That's probably a thing, so we will give it capital letters. They argue at the beginning of the decade, the 1960s, the United States of America was behind in the space race and they would not have been able to have got man on the moon first. And there we are. That would be the end of our second main paragraph. I've got a couple of things to check in terms of spelling. I reread it to make sure it makes sense, and then I would be able to move on. So if you pause your video now, you can have a go at writing this main paragraph, and once you're done, you can move on to the tutorial for the next one. So here we are for our final main paragraph. As you can see down the bottom, this is the equipment paragraph where we're going to talk about sort of the things that were used and how this proves if it was real or fake or not. So there's only really in this paragraph one main argument for the lunar landings being real and one main argument for it being fake. I feel one of these is very, very powerful. So furthermore, 400,000 people worked at NASA for nearly 10 years to develop the technology for the first manned mission to the moon. If the moon landings were faked, a lot of people would have to keep an immense secret. That's a really powerful piece of evidence. And then you might talk about, on the other hand, Bill Casing, who worked at the company where the engines for the moon rocket were being made, claimed that the rockets didn't work properly. It should, however, be noted that Casing's role at NASA was not a scientist or an engineer. So you can then take this however you want. You might want to add in different facts and different pieces of evidence. But remember, it's always good to use ones that link. I don't want to be talking about the people of NASA and then all of a sudden try and link it, rather than to people, to something a lot more different. So using a similar way of working to your second main paragraph, you can level 1 mimic, just change the words. You can level 2 mimic and try and change the order of sentences. You might want to put the part about Bill Casing first. And your mission, for want of a better word, for the rest of today is to make sure that you are as far through these main paragraphs as you can be. And don't forget to send any work that you do to your teachers.